Okay, ladies. All right, we're going to find wherever you want to sit and get started. Next time, we'll do that for an hour. I saw some groups were growing and growing and growing. You guys did so good. All right. All right, ladies. We are going to start with worship. Stand, sit, whatever you're comfortable with. All right. YouTube ads. Wonderful. All right, you guys can have a seat. So I wanted to end on that song because, well, it's a great song. But we are going to have two people share all about Jesus and what he did in their life. So it's a perfect song. So I'm going to introduce both of them. So the first person is Carrie Falor, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about, I don't know, how long we go back or whatever. What? What? Oh. I forget how many years we've been friends, since before children, so long time. And we went to church together way back at St. Pete, and then they have moved here, there, and everywhere, but we've always stayed in touch, and we, including Carrie, knew that her husband was called to be in ministry, and we just kept asking, you ready, you ready, you ready? And COVID hit, and he was ready, and so that's the end of that. Here they are. So, but be praying for the people that share, because when you ask someone to tell their story, there's a lot to your story. I mean, think about, depending how old you are, how long you've been with the Lord, what it was like before the Lord. That's just like, well, how do you decide what to tell? So just be praying for them, and as they are vulnerable, sharing, to encourage you guys that the Lord is always at work.
I don't like the microphone very much. Oh, no. Okay. Am I good? Can everybody hear me? Okay, I'm going to pray because I wasn't nervous. I don't usually get nervous, but I'm a little nervous right now. Heavenly Father, as I begin to share my testimony, I pray that you're glorified through every word. That the sin not be glorified in the stuff that I was going through, but that the end result is that you were there for me and that you love me. And I pray that whoever needs to hear, hears, and Lord, that you just speak through me. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so I didn't know how to start. You just get up there and say, once upon a time, there was a little girl with strawberry blonde hair and green eyes, and she lived in this world. So, or do you have bullet points and you just read them all? Like, I don't have a note. I'll be honest, I don't have one note because I already know my testimony, so and I just need to trust that the Lord's gonna show me and remind me of the things I need to share. This is really awkward, Holly. Can I pull this back? And just put my feet up? There we go. Okay. Okay, so I did not grow up in a Christian home. There, we got it. Is that good?
Okay. Oh, okay, so you did by yourself.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Okay. Okay. My parents, my mom, my dad, they loved me the best that they knew how to love me. We're all products of our environment, and they did the best they could with me. My parents were divorced. I lived with my mom until I was like 12 or 13. I think I was like 12 maybe, and then I moved over to my dad's, and it was good, and then it was not good. And so my stepmom did not like me. She didn't, not me personally, but it was more for her benefit. Like, things were more for her benefit. Now, that being said, she didn't know the Lord, so there's grace, right? I still pray for her today. As I got older and things got more intense in my life, as you know, I was a senior in high school, and I found out some stuff was going on, and I confronted it. And at that point, you know, I was given a choice, or my dad was given a choice, either I was to leave or she was to leave. So he just said, you know, Carrie, I think you need to go back to your mom's. I was a senior in high school. In my second semester, I had 1 semester left to graduate, and I was on a path with physical therapy. Like, there was a health class or a health thing. It was like dual enrollment. And so the school that I moved to, and it was for physical therapy, sports medicine, physical therapy. And so that's what I was doing, and I only had a semester, and then I would have a certificate. I wouldn't be like a physical therapist. Oh, here I am, you know. So I moved back to my mom's, and that program wasn't offered. So everything that I had worked for all those years, I played soccer, and I could have gone to a school and played soccer, and was just kind of like, okay, it's done. So I had some choices to make. I was I wouldn't say that I was like angry. I was shut down. So I was like, I didn't feel the emotions that I probably should have felt. I kind of cut it off. And I said, well, I'll just do whatever feels good. So I wound up getting myself into a lot of trouble. You know, there's songs like Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places. And there I was. And it wasn't just like physical. It was emotional. It was mental. It was, you know, drugs and alcohol and different avenues that I took to fulfill a need in me that would never be filled by this world. And I didn't know that. Well, in '92, I met this young man named Ben. And we met at a party, and we hung out and whatever. And I was, not that I was like this, I was never like a flirty person. I don't even think there's some stories, but I won't share them today. Catch me on the side. And so that's after I got married, because people were like, oh, you know, we don't like when people flirt. And I'm like, what does that even look like? You know, like, so you know, but I liked people. I was a people person. So one day I was getting my nails done. I drove home, and I was passing where he lived, and I stopped in, and I was like, hey, what are you doing? Just laying on the couch watching football. And I said, well, and he's like, well, you want to get something to eat? And I'm like, in the middle of your football game? Yeah. I tried to get a salad. I'm not a salad eater, right? I mean, at the time I was like, but this is gonna be good. So these people that I dated weren't like what my mom would have said, you know what, this is a really good thing. So when I came home, I was like, hey, Mom, I'm going to go out with somebody. And she's like, is it a guy? And I said, yeah. And she goes, does he have a job? And I'm like, yeah, he has a job. She's like, okay. You know, like that was going to stop me. But so we went out, and that was it. We went on this one to dinner at like 10 o'clock at night to Wags somewhere in Largo. And so anyway, our story started at that point, and it went on, and we were together, and we broke up, and we were together, and we broke up. And one time we were living in St. Cloud, and so this is still like this was in 95, I think, when this happened. It was, because that was when I was saved. And I knew his family, but I didn't know them very well, because we didn't live the same lifestyle. You know, like it scared me half the time to be at their house, and, oh, we're praying for you. And I'm like, that is so weird. I don't know why they're praying for me. Look, do I look like I'm happy, I'm having fun, I'm living the best life I can, you know? I don't need all that, you know? I didn't know I needed all that. So, long story short, his brother, I met Andy and Jen. Well, I knew Andy all those years, and then he met Jen, and then they got married, and so we went over there a couple times, and I'm like, man, there's something different with them. There's something that they have that I just can't, you know, I don't know if anybody's ever felt that, but I was like, there's something they have, and they don't have that void that I have. Like, I didn't know it at the time, but that's kind of that urge that I had, which now is like the Holy Spirit saying, hey, you know, looking for an open door. Are you ready to open the door sometime soon? Because, so I just, every time I went there, I was like, this peace, there was like, they had something that I wanted that I couldn't touch. I didn't know what it was. And so I went, we were in St. Cloud, and it was really bad, and we were really, I didn't even know anything about the Lord. I didn't know about Jesus. I didn't know that Ben knew about Jesus. Like, I just didn't know anything. And so I just remember them praying one time before we left, and, you know, they tried to talk to us, and, you know, Ben knew, and so he would hear, but then he was like, you know, I'm on the run, so, you know, he's gonna do his thing, and okay, we gotta go. So we were there, and I got really sick, and I wound up in the hospital with asthma. And it was kind of, I have allergies, I've had asthma, but it wasn't so severe. But I think my lifestyle, the things I was doing to my body, the things that my extracurricular activities didn't help my lungs at all. And so I wound up in the hospital. And Ben and I were not getting along. So, you know, you're living in sin. There's no peace in your environment. So we were just like, we couldn't really stand each other, and we were living in this little place, and it's like, you know, but this is just what you do, and this, you know, we're doing it. So nobody came up to the hospital, so I was up there, and I remember laying in the bed, and this lady that was in the bed next to me was like, I mean, I had some friends come up, but Ben didn't come up because we were just like, you know, he was young, we were so young. Now he would have been in big trouble, but back then, like, you know, I didn't really want him to come up there. But so I'm laying there, and the lady next to me goes, so if you died, where would you go? And I just remember panicking, like, my body's gonna be in the ground, I'm gonna be eaten by bugs. Oh my goodness, what is gonna happen? And I was like, in a full-fledged, like, I have no idea what's gonna happen to me when I die, and the bugs are gonna eat me. And I don't really like bugs that much, so it was an issue. So that happens, and I don't remember a response or hearing from her, you know. So I don't remember her response. I don't remember if I responded to her. I just remember being in that panic, like crippling panic of what is going to happen. I have no idea. And so Ben picked me up from the hospital, allergic to cats. He had a cat in the car. I'm like, you know what? You're $1 million, buddy. And then, you know, he said, I think you need to go home to your mom. I think you need to go back home. I don't think this is good. And I just remember that feeling. And then he left and went to work, and I was home, and I remember, I'm like, I have Andy's phone number, and I'm going to call him right now. I remember being in this little trailer, this little 2-bedroom, single-wide trailer on a couple acres out in, you know, wherever we were, St. Cloud. And I said, Andy, I need help. I don't know what's happening. Somebody asked me this, and you guys are praying, and so what is all this? What's going on? And he just led me to the Lord, and he prayed with me, and it was really sweet. No. And I just, from that moment, I lived my life with these expectations, and you were loved by what you did. And I didn't have to do anything, but you were loved by what you did, and the expectations were so high that you could never really meet those expectations. And so when I accepted the Lord and I had that feeling that it just didn't make sense to me, like I don't have to do anything, and the Lord loves me, Jesus loves me, that I don't have to meet any other expectation but surrender. And it was like a 360. Everything in my life just changed. Ben drove me back to my mom's house, or I can't remember how I got back, but somehow I got back to my mom's over here, and Andy and Jen lived over here, and I just was going to church with them, and so I tried to I was like on a mission. Okay, all these friends I know, all these people that I did some heavy drugs and really bad stuff, they need to know about this Jesus that I now know about. And so they were, oh, you're back in town. Why don't you come to this party? Oh, I'd love to. Well, I have something for you. So here I am surrounded by all these people, and it's dark, spiritually, there's this battle in me, and I can feel, I'm very sensitive to that. And so I was there, and I'm like, you guys don't understand. You don't need to do this. I know that it's what gets us through every day when we're doing it, but you don't have to. Let me draw you a picture. And I had the one over here and the mountains over here, and then drew the bridge. I'm like, that's Jesus. Do you understand that? And they're like, are you tripping? And I'm like, no, I'm not. This is real. They thought, she's out there. She's lost her ever-living mind. And they didn't get it. And I was like, well, why don't they get it? Because I got it. And they don't get it. And I think, and come to find out, some of those people have gotten it over the years. That was a long time ago. And so, I've still look at them on Facebook, and I see where people's lives have changed. And then there's some that you still just have to pray for, because there's some that lost their lives and you don't know that they ever accepted the Lord, but you just continue to pray for people. That's just, so accepted the Lord. I moved on. I tried to get everybody saved. I'm telling the whole world. I remember being at home and saying, okay, God, how do I witness to my family who doesn't know you? They've probably heard about you. And he's like, that verse, and everyone in your household shall be saved. People say, don't take things out of context, but that was one of the very first things that I read that stuck out to me. You don't fret. It's okay. I have this. You don't have to do anything but live for me. And I'm like, oh, this is so hard. I want results. Now I'm going to tell these people, they're just going to know, and if it was only that easy. So I remember praying and just praying and praying for my family, and slowly my mom started asking questions, and then she accepted the Lord. And then my stepdad asked questions, and he accepted the Lord. And they were going to Calvary St. Pete for a long time, and now they still go to Danny's church. So that was an answer, that God showed me that, and it was real. And then my sister accepted the Lord. I can't manage their walks with the Lord, but I know that she knows. I know that they know. My brother, we're working on it. We're praying for him. But those are the people that were in my house, and God said, you don't have to worry. It's not your job. Your job is to live for me, and people will see that through you. You don't have to put on a show for me. And so I'm not a good show putter on her, so that was very convenient. You want results, but this doesn't really do a good job at if someone says something, and I've been working on it, so my face doesn't but I've been working on it. It's getting better, and I'm a little older now, so I think it's working itself out. So, then Ben and I decided to get married. We went to premarital counseling. And we were still kind of in the world, but yet I knew the Lord, so it made a difference. Oh, and when I got saved, I called him up and I said, I probably said some other things, but the gist of it is, how did you know and never tell me? And he's like, but you can't live like that. but in that moment, I was living like that. I was like, how would you, this is so different. This is like legit. This is love that people don't feel in their entire lives that I have now, that I never had. That even though my parents loved me the way that they knew, it was never like our Heavenly Father can love me. So we got over that little hurdle. We moved on. We went to premarital counseling twice. The first time we went, and the last night we went to dinner and whatever, it was still like that rough, like, this is just what we're gonna do. And the last night, Ben was like, I can't do this. I'm not sure. So everything was off. And that was it. We were done. And I said, well, I can't be your friend. I can't know about your life. I don't want to. I can't, for my well-being, we have to just, if we're not together, then we have to be apart. Like, we can't have the best of both worlds. And so I kept my distance, and he would come to my place where I lived. I had a roommate, and, eventually. So a little bit of time went on. This was in, like, September, and I'd only been a Christian about a year, and still kind of dabbing my feet in the world, but yet, not as bad as I was prior. And so we went through premarital counseling, ended it, I get sick. I wind up in the hospital. I have avoided Ben since September. This was in December, and I'd avoided him all this time. I'm like so proud of myself, because that's not easy, especially when you love somebody. And I remember after he broke up with me that night, I called his mom and I said, I still have a peace. I still feel like the Lord is going to put us together. I still feel like it might not be today, but I just know that we will be together. Like, I just feel that. And so she's like, oh, this poor baby. She's going to get her heart broken, and it's going to be my son, and I don't want it to be a bad taste in her mouth, And so I get sick, I wind up in the hospital, and I have nowhere to run now. Every time I knew he was coming over, I left. I could avoid those encounters with him because I chose not to be where he was for those few months. And he shows up at the hospital, and I'm like, with these tubes, where am I gonna go now? And so we hung out, and I never questioned it. And then I got out of the hospital because that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted. So I didn't want to like say no. And so he says, hey, why don't you come over to dinner one night? And so I'm on the way there, and I'm like, this is so stupid. Why am I doing this again? This is going to be a bad deal. We already went down this road. I can't be your friend. And I'm in the car, and I'm like, I can't be your friend. I can't do this. We can't hang out. Be strong, Carrie. You're stronger than that. You can do this. So I get there, and we eat dinner, and I'm like, I just lost it. I do that sometimes. Sometimes when I'm on the river and there's a lightning storm, I just lose it, okay? So I just was like, got to this point where I'm like, why am I here? What do you want me here for? What is the whole reason why we're having dinner? Because I can't be your friend. And I'm like really laying into him, and he just looks at me and he's like, I was gonna ask you to marry me. And I'm like, oh. All right, rewind. And then I still didn't believe him. I'm like, don't play games with me. This is ridiculous. And I'm from New York. I'm Italian. It's life, okay? So he married that. He knew when he did that. We were watching home videos, and I'm like yelling at my kids, nice as it could be, when I told them 14 times, put the video camera down. Because they're videoing me because they want to try me to the point where I say, give me the thing. And so everybody's favorite thing is when mom says, give me the thing. And I'm ripping it out of their hands. But it's all in love. It's all in love. Jesus knows. So we get married 3 months later because we knew that if we were going to do this, we needed to do it right. And we needed past is past. Like, let's live for the Lord, then we're going to do this right. So May 3rd, 1997, we got married. I don't know what time. I didn't look when I started. Okay. I mean, my story's forever, So we got married we didn't have kids for a while. We didn't do anything not to have kids, but I think it was a little over a year, and I didn't get pregnant, but we didn't. It was just whatever happened. I was already, well, I was 23 when we got married, so 97. In 98, I got pregnant, and I was working full time, and Ben's working full time, and we're kind of, you're just in this new, we're real. I don't know if I like him, but I love him. But but let's just, let's pray. Let's just pray together this one time, and then we'll be okay for the next 6 months. It's like you're still learning how to live in a year, right? A year and a half. And so I got pregnant, and I was 3.5 months pregnant. We were excited. I mean, this is going to happen. This is real. And my mother-in-law bought me these little shoes. And 3.5 months, I was 15 weeks, I think. Is that about 3.5 months? I had a miscarriage, and it was devastating. And I remember going to the doctor and her saying, "We can't find a heartbeat. I'm sending you to the hospital because their equipment, they'll be able to do this and this and this." So there was no heartbeat. So they send me home. I guess back then, I don't know, but they didn't do it like they did it now, where they do everything in the hospital. So I had to go home and take care of all of this on my own. And I'm not going to give you the details of it, but come to find out that the doctor was using the stuff that I had to bring to her after this happened at home for research and stuff like that, but I didn't know that. Otherwise, I would have never put myself through what I went through. But I know at 15 weeks, a baby's pretty developed. Like, you can see that it's a baby. You can see all of this stuff. So we do that, and I kind of go back to, okay, this is back to high school. This is really painful. God is not fast enough to make me feel better. So we're dabbing back in the world a little bit. We're still going to church, but now we're missing Sundays, and we're just like self-medicating, right? And so we're now doing this. And so I was due March 12th, 1998. And I took the day off of work. My mom took the day off of work, and I was sick. I was like sick for a couple days, like sick to my stomach, and I'm like, ugh. And so my mom's like, so we're taking the day off, and she's like, let's watch some movies that just make us cry. And I'm like, that's dumb. I don't want to cry. Like, I don't want to do that, but I just didn't want to go to work. It was, that's on my mind. I don't know. It was my mom's idea. So I took the day off, and we hung out, and she's like, well, let's just, so we're hanging out, and she's like, Carrie, everything that you're doing is like you're pregnant again. And remember, I self-medicated for those months in between because God wasn't fast enough. And so I was kind of upset with the Lord because that was a lot of stuff to go through, and I didn't want to go through that. And so on that day, my mom's like, just take a test. And I'm like, Mom, this is the worst day ever. I don't know why you're making me take a test. So I take a test, and it comes out positive. And so I'm like, oh, geez. And so it's like, oh, geez, is this going to happen again? And then all of a sudden, it was like the Lord just reminded me that He is fast enough. And when He comes to rescue us, it is more than we can handle. And so it's okay. And He never left me. I walked away from Him, and He still blessed me. Even though I wasn't honoring Him, He still blessed me. It's good. It was good, right? So, I don't even think that we worried so much about another miscarriage. I just couldn't get over the fact that I was like, God's not fast enough, and He's not making me feel better right now, so I'm just going to do it myself. And whatever, maybe this isn't the life for me. And I can remember thinking those things in my head, but yet being so involved in the Fuller family, which was grounded biblically, which, these people are praying, and so how can you deny? And, it's just a confusing time. And just remembering that moment when I was like, God showed me, told me, said, not in an audible voice, but in those moments, I was like, he never left me. I left him. I shut that door for a minute because he wasn't fast enough to do what I wanted. I was still not honoring him through my trial, through my heartbreak, through that pain. But he was still right there. He was probably there with his arms open, and I just didn't want to go that way because I knew this was a lot faster. This was going to make me feel better a lot faster. And that was the changing point for us. Like, okay, get rid of everything and be done. And so that was it. And so our lives changed drastically after that. And then we wound up having 3 kids in 3.5 years. And I was like, okay, Lord, I got your point. I love them, but it was a lot. Like, I had 3 babies in 3.5 years. And then we started church with Holly and them, and this church was a blessing. Like, when I was young 20 years ago, having my babies, and people were doing what I'm doing now, or what I should always be doing now, like reaching out to those people who are young moms, and they're in this place of loneliness, and yet they're doing their job, what God's called them to do. And so my goal now is to be that person that people were for me, and it was the example of the ladies here. And I don't want to like make everybody's high horse, but you know what I mean. Like, God really used this church and this fellowship to help me through, those times. And so there's a lot more to my story. I could probably talk for another 2 hours, but I think I'm gonna stop there and just know that for me, like, the reminders are that even though I was hurting, I didn't think God was fast enough, or maybe I didn't think he was capable. I didn't know, but I just, and then he still came back and loved me. And there was no expectation. There was no expectation too high that I couldn't be loved again. I didn't have to run 5 miles for that acceptance. I didn't have to do anything but take it, like, accept it. And so and I forget that often. And so when I go through trials, I forget those moments when God showed up, and he always shows up, and I just forget. And so I have to remind myself to take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. But sometimes it takes me days or weeks to remember that, and then I'm like, oh yeah, remember he loves me? So. And I brought these up because it looks really good to come up with something and not like, okay, I got this.
I'll introduce myself. I actually have show and tell, so I have a fun story.
Here, Lisa, you use my.
I have a fun story. Years ago, she used to help me, was kind of my assistant, and she used to leave notes Carrie used to leave notes in my drawers telling me about God. She doesn't, I still have the notes. So, now see, this is the difference. I have notes. And they're page numbered, so they're page numbered, so I'm okay. You're safe. I think the most important thing that the Lord. Is that good? Closer? How's that? Good. I think the thing that I'm really learning now, or in the last few years, is not to ask why, but to ask how are you going to use it, and how's good going to come. And so what I'd like to do today is kind of just give you a little summary of my background, and then share with you about 3 or 4 stories on what I call my God moments, and then maybe share with you a couple books besides the Bible that have really made a difference in my life. So I was the seventh of 8 children living in Southern California in the mid-60s. Pretty middle-class family. My father was a functioning alcoholic. My mother was a hard as nails office manager. And I started selling drugs and using them at the age of 12. I was removed from 6th grade for slapping a nun and telling her I hated her and I made her sick. And then I got kicked out of another Catholic school. But what is so amazing is that even in my rebellion, what are you laughing at? Because I'm such a dweeb now. They're all laughing like she couldn't have been like that. And so, but then what happened is in my teens, I went to a Sunday night service because a boy that I used to get high with got saved because he had a really scary experience taking acid one night. And so I followed him to this church thinking, let's get stoned after church, you know, that kind of thing. But what happened is and at that church, it was in Riverside, California, Greg Laurie, Lonnie Frisbee were teaching from Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, and I had become best friends with the girl that was the sister to the boy. So God just knew how angry and hurting I was, and I just got saved. I mean, it was that simple. And the desire for drugs, the alcohol, everything was totally gone, just like Carrie. It totally gone. The only thing I did is I smoked till I was 30. That was stupid, but I did that. So then I'm 18, graduated from high school. I backpacked through Europe with Martha, my friend. We went, some of you know, L'Abri in Switzerland, which is a Christian community, and there were lots of Christian communities in the hippie days in Europe. So we got to spend months going to those. And, you know, we made some really poor choices, 2 young girls running around Europe, but God protected us. I'm always amazed that the protection that I can see stories from other kids that were backpacking that didn't turn out so well. So I get back in Riverside, and I'm going to Calvary Chapel, Riverside, and it's now Harvest Christian Fellowship. Some of you may know that. And I ended up marrying the assistant pastor, and at our wedding, Keith Green sang, Debbie Kerner sang, Romaine, the assistant pastor from Costa Mesa, married us under a Jewish chuppah. There were 600 people at this wedding. It was insane. But we were divorced 18 months later. And I will never forget the compassion and mercy from Greg Laurie. He tried so hard to help us work this out, but it didn't. So my ex-husband, who was an Old Testament Bible teacher, good man, he left the church, ended up starting some other ministries, and I pretty much said, if this is how God is, I'm done. And so it was just, I just wanted to be numb because it didn't work out the way that it was supposed to. And so 3 years later, I married Bob Dersham, my husband of 36 years, and who is not yet saved. And so I lived 25 to 44, really, we had double income, no children. I was the regional manager for a large medical company for the Southeast, and I just pretty much stayed numb to God. But what is so amazing is God protected me. I mean, this was an era when if you didn't have this with the boss, you were gonna lose your job. And I just always got protected. I've actually climbed over walls to get away from some not nice things happening. So I was so grateful. I wasn't grateful to God, I just thought I was pretty good. And another side note, and I've said this to Holly before, in my drug years, my mother was as tough as nails. And so any of you, I'm not a mother, but any of you mothers out there, I would be in the gutter if my mother did not fight me every step of the way. And the one thing I remember is that I saw her face. One time she had to pull me off and have the police come and take me to juvenile hall. And just the look in her face. But the great thing that happened is after I got saved and I tried to pull her out of the Catholic Church, which didn't work. My mother was a Catholic catechumenist, and I'm now going to Calvary Chapel, and it's like, but what happened is the Lord let us meet in between, in the middle, and agree, you can go to Catholic Church, you can go to Calvary Chapel, and we became friends, and we actually traveled the world together. So it was, but had my mother not been tough as nails and not care that I used to say, I hate you and you make me sick, and she just, yeah, you stupid little kid, you know. So now we're up to September of 1999. I was 44, and Dr. Barbara Borland, most of you know, she was Dr. Hall at the time. She called with the biopsy results, and it was invasive breast cancer. And, you know, after the first few weeks of the pounding fear, the surgery, the radiation, everything that goes on, I took on the attitude, breast cancer, let me check my schedule. I just really didn't have the time for it. But what happened, and I sent Barbara this really big basket of wine and cheese, thanking her for finding the breast cancer so early. I had 2 surgeons tell me they saw the films and they wanted to know why she did the biopsy because they did not see anything in the films. So I sent her this, and then I didn't know Barbara personally at the time. She was a doc that did the biopsy. And she doesn't usually later, as we became friends, she doesn't usually send patients cards. But she sent me this card that said, the early detection had nothing to do with my skill or luck, blah, blah, blah. God just has a plan for your life. And I went, and I knew that the Lord was calling me back. You know, just you go through all that, and then you get this card from this doctor. And it just really triggered me that he was wrapping his arms around me the whole time. So then I started going to Calvary Chapel, St. Pete. And one night, coming home from the airport, I was on a plane every week. One night, I decided to stop at a home fellowship in Clearwater. And they had all these home fellowships and everything. And so I came in, and the family, you know, the exact house, the family room, and there was like 10 chairs in a circle. And the leader looked at me and said, so what's your story? And his wife kicked him, and I later learned he doesn't normally do that. So I told the group the story about this doctor that I sent this basket to that found this breast cancer really early and sent me this note. And I pulled the note out of my Bible, and the room, you could hear like, most of the people in the room were friends with Barbara. They knew her. And she also went to Calvary Chapel, St. Pete. And I just didn't know that. And that's when I really knew that the Lord had orchestrated this so that this doesn't just happen, you know, all the circumstances, so that I would know that he was doing it. And I couldn't say God didn't do that. And so then that was such an amazing time because Holly and Debbie Friley were starting the Salt and Light groups. So it had been years since I had read the Bible. I went to St. Pete and everything, but when you hear somebody read it versus reading it yourself, it was a whole different thing. So what was happening is they were sharing with us how you can read the Bible relationally. What's God doing? What are the people doing? Just really digging into it. And I think, yes, I did bring it. We also were memorizing scriptures. So we would meet once a week. There was women. And I have Holly, 20, how many years? You tell it's a little gross looking. This is what Holly gave me 20-some years ago, and it has my memory verses in it. And I have to tell you that I carried it in my purse. I have carried it in my purse and still do. There were times when I was working and things were going bad at work or whatever was going on, I'd pull off into a parking lot and start reading these scriptures. So God just really used those for me. The one thing, it took me 5 years with the encouragement of Salt and Light to read and kind of outline the Bible. And so now I'm so grateful for that time with Salt and Light, because the encouragement to read the word for myself, to let the Holy Spirit speak to me, not that preaching and teaching isn't bad, but getting it into yourself. What happened is I may not know scripture and verse of the whole Bible, but I know who God is. I know what he's like. I know what he does. And so when you hear this, you go, that's not my God. My God is a God of compassion and mercy. That's who my God is. So knowing the word for myself that's an invaluable tool, and I'm forever grateful that Holly orchestrated putting that together. So that's kind of just the summary, but now if I've got a few minutes, I want to tell you if we can get through 4 stories. But the stories come because of what I call my book of remembrance. About 20 years ago, a very good friend of mine had encouraged me to write down in excruciating detail the things that God does. You know, those supernatural things or those extraordinary things that we all have them. You have them. You may not remember them because they're not written down. So that's an encouragement that I have. So what I did is I started writing them down, and I call that my book of remembrance, because the enemy or my memory cannot steal from me what God has done because it's on paper. And there are times when I say, oh, are you ever going to show up? I go back and I reread those. So for me. But the first story, I have them kind of titled, the first story is Health and Vitality. So I was 49 at the time when Barbara called with the second biopsy. And it was invasive breast cancer in the other breast. But by this time, Barbara and I had become friends. And this time, the cancer was totally different and very aggressive. And so this is when Barbara and I had talked that if we didn't figure out how to get healthy versus chase sickness, it wasn't going to work out so well for me. And so that's when the two of us started our journey on chasing health, looking for health versus chasing sickness. And our first question was, how did a healthy 44-year-old get breast cancer? And so I was following, I was doing what everybody said to do, low fat, high sugar. I was drinking diet Dr. Pepper. Of course, that had to be good because it was diet. So I was doing all of the things I thought I was supposed to be doing, but it was killing me. The standard American diet was killing me. And, one breast at a time. And so then, and the other thing, I had a very high-stress job, and I thought that I could sleep when I was dead. So all of those things combined did not make for a healthy person, even though I thought I was healthy. And so what happened is, over the years, Barbara and I learned that, I'm going to grab a Kleenex. Barbara and I learned that clean eating, hydration, restorative sleep, and spiritual health were key to the health and vitality. I mean, that's what I had to do, or it wasn't going to work out so well. And then Father opened the door for Barbara and I to become business partners. And we have just been incredibly blessed to help people who are in crisis get on a health journey. And then 6 years ago, at the age of 59, I was diagnosed with breast cancer for the 3rd time. They tried to kill me 3 times, so I had to shoot them. So, that had to go. It was amazing how Father wrapped his arms around me during the mastectomy. I have to tell you, that was a terrible recovery and incredibly difficult. But what was so amazing is that I had 2 oncologists tell me, if you weren't so healthy, you'd be dead. They do not have any 3-time breast cancer survivors. They don't have any patients because those patients don't live. And so just seeing that God showed me since the second time that if you don't change around your health, this is not going to work out. And then having 2 oncologists tell me if you weren't so healthy, you wouldn't be alive. And so that's what gives me such joy to help people on the health journey. So that's the first story. The second story is secrets. And secrets are not good. So I went through an incredibly long season of having anxiety attacks while driving. And remember, I'm a Southeast Regional Sales Manager. I fly and I drive. That's what I do. It got so bad, and remember, this was a secret. I didn't tell anyone. I kind of flubbed my way about not having to drive. So I was driving from North Carolina back up to Pennsylvania, I spent the night in a hotel, trying to get on Interstate 95. Couldn't do it. Here's this, career professional, and I can't get on the freeway. I have to call my husband, who's up in Pennsylvania at the time. He has to call his niece, and they have to drive 3 hours to get me. His niece, who's a nurse, thought I was having a heart attack because no one could imagine that I was having anxiety attacks because I kept it all a secret. And so it was just so interesting. The enemy used my secret against me. You cannot be healed. This is never going to go away. You're going to live your life with this secret anxiety. And I really believe that. But then I had to call my husband because I couldn't, literally tried 4 times to get on the on-ramp and just had to pull over. And so my secret was out. I had, oh no, now what am I going to do? My husband knows. So I had been working with a life coach for many years, just as a professional and personal life coach. And I finally told her, and she just really, the Lord just used that to help me get to the root of the anxiety and understand how the enemy was using that against me. And so I'm just so incredibly thankful for something I never thought I would get healed of. God used, because the secret had to come out, God used that to help me. The only thing I have to say is if you have any kind of coach, I really strongly suggest that they be spirit-filled and biblically based. She is a woman who rocks God, or I would not be listening to her. So secrets are not a good thing. I'm just suggesting if you've got secrets, find somebody who you really, really trust and tell your secret to, and I think God can help that. This is kind of my favorite. This is a sweet time with Jesus. So I had the reconstruction and you're not supposed to have reconstruction when you've had radiation, and remember, I've had radiation in both breasts. So I just knew God was going to let me have little boobs. That's it. I just knew that there was just no doubt. And so I went to Dr. Agozi, and he was an incredible plastic surgeon, and he said, you know this isn't going to work. And I went to a couple of the doctors who was going to do the reconstruction. And anyway, so Dr. Agozi said, if you do these things, I will work with you to try to get this reconstruction to work, but it probably won't. But if I don't help you, then you're going to find some doctor that has no idea what he's doing, and then it's going to be a mess. And so this is from August of 2014. I had the expanders and everything. So August 2014, I get they transfer the expanders for the implants. And so he is suturing this man at 7 o'clock in the morning would suture the little incision marks that were coming apart. And so September of 2015, I was in Montana for a couple months. I got to see Jency and Alex, and yellow stuff was seeping out of the incision. And so it's the only time you get to text people pictures of your breast. So I texted him pictures, and so then, it wasn't good ones. So then he said, get on a plane and get home right now. But first stop at a hospital and get somebody to give you an antibiotic IV. So did just that. He meets us at his office because he's hoping it's not as bad as the pictures look. I'm in surgery, I have recovery, and they remove one of the implants. And so the thing happened is I woke up and I knew God was there, and I just said to God, I can't talk to you right now. I cannot talk to you. I was just dumbfounded that I was so wrong on what God was going to do. I knew he was going to let this in. I knew that I knew he was going to do this. And so I just really said that I can't talk to him right now. And I kind of went back to my numb. I wanted to be numb for a while because God didn't do what I thought God was supposed to do. And what was so interesting is those days, I knew Jesus was sitting on the bed, but there was no condemnation. There was only silence. He just sat there. And so I was mourning my relationship with God. I was mourning how could I have been so wrong about my relationship with him. And so I went into kind of a mourning time about the broken that I thought was broken. God knew it wasn't broken, but I thought it was broken. So I had to have IVs at home. I did for many weeks. I did 2 IVs. I had a PICC line. I had 2 IVs a day. And so finally, when I was sitting at the kitchen counter with doing the IV, God said, okay, it's time. You're not numb anymore. We're gonna go through this. And so he used that time with the word to really show me I do not know how God is going to do anything. I cannot predict what he's going to do. All I can predict is what he's going to do is going to end up good. Don't know how, don't know when, but I had to get that out of my heart that I knew he was going to do something. And it just wasn't the case. And so that is really when I learned to stop saying why and to start saying, how will you use this and what good will come? That I call that my sweet time with Jesus, because sitting at your kitchen counter twice a day with an antibiotic in your arm, an IV in your arm, I had nothing else to do but spend time with him. So that actually was a gift, even though I didn't think so. Okay, and I think that's it. No, we have one more fun one. So this is the puzzle. Does everybody know what a spaghetti chart is? It looks like, and you can't figure out how it's going to go. So just recently, this woman from Michigan calls the church, talks to Savannah, and says to Savannah, my sister-in-law who lives in Palm Harbor is really sick with a very rare cancer. And is there any way that somebody can see her in online studies? So Savannah calls and says, Lisa, can you call this woman for you and Holly's Tuesday night Salt and Light group? So I call this woman, I get her name, and I say, I know that name. This woman lived 5 doors down from me when we lived in Palm Harbor, and she was involved in the sale of my house in Palm Harbor before we moved to Trinity. Okay, that's not the story. That's just so she starts attending the Tuesday night, and she's incredibly ill, and so that is really great. But then I think after 2 or 3 weeks on the phone, we're talking on the phone one afternoon and everything. Her name is Cynthia, and she gave me permission. And what do you do? What do you do? We're talking about stuff. And she asked me what I do, and I say, I work with Dr. Spiegel. I have this home medical product called the Beamer, and I just show people how to use it. She says, now keep in mind, there's only 60,000 of these machines in the United States, so it's not like there's very many of them. She says, I have a Beamer. I said, no, you don't. I'm sure you don't. No, you don't have a Beamer. Oh, yeah, my husband, it's in the guest bedroom right now. Yeah, why don't we just go in there, take FaceTime? It's not the Beamer. The woman keep in mind, I help people learn to use their Beamer. She has a Beamer in her guest bedroom. There is no way. Her husband bought it several years ago when he was in Phoenix with a doctor, working with a doctor in Phoenix. So now she says, do you think I should use this? I said, of course. So now I'm helping her learn to use this product. How do you put that puzzle piece together? Only God. And now I'm at her house praying with her husband and teaching her husband, because he quit using it, and helping them use it and for their health. So it's just one of those circumstances that I can't deny, that all the puzzle pieces fit together. So I've got tons of other stories, and the reason why I have tons of other stories is because I have them in a book, and I have them written, and I have some pretty supernatural kind of stories that I love to read sometimes, because I'll go back and go, did God really do that? And I go back, and sure enough, because we forget, and the enemy, either our memory or the enemy, robs us of what God has done. So the other thing, let me grab my little show and tell. So the things that, it doesn't have to be Quest, but a Bible that kind of gives you the background. Any Bible that's a study Bible. For example, when you first read about the Samaritan woman, you don't realize that she's at the well at 12 o'clock because she's an outcast. Women didn't go to the well at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So you get the backstory on a lot of things when you have a study Bible. And there's lots of ways to do it. The next thing is, the next book, I don't have it anymore because I loan books and never get them back. There was a book called Let Prayer Change Your Life by Becky Tyrabisi. And she's a little legalistic about it, but what it is about daily time with God. And I've had years where it's an hour a day. I've had years where it's 20 minutes a day. But she really helps you learn, okay, how do you have time with God? And that was when Danny Hodges encouraged everyone, because his wife's Kim? Wendy had 4 small children and somehow found time to spend time with the Lord every day personally. And then the other, I like books that challenge me to go back to the Word, because I'm going, nah, it's not that way. God doesn't really do things that way. And so I have to go back to the Word. And this is one of the books, Live a Praying Life. I've gone through chapter 3 times, and I've done Bible studies with several women on this several times. It really talks about how God uses our prayers and how important praying is. So this one challenged me because it forced me to acknowledge that I play a role in what God is going to do by my prayers. The other one, and we just finished it, you see it's got all of my handprints all over it. It's called Gentle and Lowly, and we just finished this on Tuesday nights. The amazing thing, and it's hard for some people because you got to keep going back to the scriptures when he does this, but that's a good thing when you have to do that. But what this book has done for me is God wants me to enjoy him, and he wants to enjoy me. It's really talking about enjoying your God and letting your God enjoy you, which is just like, huh? I didn't know we were supposed to enjoy each other. So that's kind of a new one. So I think the next thing is Tuesday nights. We have a Tuesday night Zoom meeting, and you guys are so welcome to come. We spend from 6:30 to 8. We have an outline. As you can tell, it's probably structured because I am. But it doesn't have to be that. These ladies keep me in line, and they make it not so structured. Yeah, because I can get down to the pinpoint. But it's really a time of sharing in the Word, sharing how you're feeling, doing prayers, and just being a community. If we do not have a community, we're out there hanging on ourselves, and nobody wants to dangle on that tree by themselves. So you're so welcome. If anybody wants the link, you can ask me or Holly, and we'll send you the link. And you can come one Tuesday and not show up, and then come back 6 weeks later. It doesn't matter. You're welcome to come. Thank you. What do you want to say?
trying to see if this is the one I made. I don't think I made this one, did I?
No, you didn't. You didn't make things back then. You handed those out. You didn't make pretty ones.
That was Carolyn.
No, you gave me.
I did?
You
Oh,
gave me those.
Okay, so I have to tell you. So the Lord chose these two. I didn't choose them. The Lord just literally brought them to my mind. But what is amazing is how they couldn't be two more opposite. Well, even Lisa and I, like, she's like, I think we should put a timetable for our Salt and Light. I was like, I don't know, we just start at 6:30 and we end at 8. Like, that's good for me. But I love the way the Lord does that. And it's funny, too, because I was just recently going through boxes, like those Rubbermaid bins of just stuff, like letters and cards, and my kids were helping me, and they were like, don't you want to throw away any of the cards that Dad has gotten for you or you've gotten for him? I'm like, no. So we're going on 30 years, plus we dated, anyways, like almost 35 years of we've spent so much at Hallmark, but whatever. But I also found letters from these guys that were written to Brett. The one from Lisa and Ben, too. I think the one from Lisa was probably over 20 years ago. But that's so sweet. And people think, oh, you're so sentimental. Honestly, I just throw things in these bins and then but it is, now I kept it. It was very sentimental. But the other thing I have to just share really quick is, so Lisa and I were in this Salt and Light probably 22 years ago, I would say, on a Saturday morning, and then Brett was home with 3 little kids in St. Pete. We lived by Tyrone Mall, and we had decided, well, the Lord was calling us up here to plant this church, North County. We didn't know where, but it was going to be North County. And so we stuck a for sale sign in our front yard, for sale by owner, on Friday. And then I went to Bible study on Saturday, and they're all asleep. It's like early Saturday morning, which is amazing that I went to a early Saturday morning in Countryside. But anyways, because I was coming from St. Pete. So a guy pulls up into our driveway, and it says appointment only, but he calls, he wakes up the house or whatever, and then Brett answers the phone, he looks around, the guy goes, can I see the house? And he looks around, he's like, later, like, not right now. And the guy goes, well, I'm in your driveway. So he lets him in, and I'm not going to go into details, but I had 3 little kids, the house was not great, and he loved it, and he offered on the spot. Meanwhile, I'm at the Bible study in Countryside, and 2 doors down was for sale, but it wasn't for sale officially yet. I went over, long story there, but a friend took me over to the house after the Bible study, and I knew that was the house. So we sold the house in St. Pete one day later, and we bought the house, or found the house that we moved to, without any realtors, all on the same day. So I just love the stories that go way back. And just to add another, I love that Lisa plugged Salt and Light. Please talk to us about that. But also that she writes things down. And the Lord has shown me that, because I absolutely know that we forget, and you want to pass those down to the next generation. And I need people like Lisa to help me with that. All right, we are going to close with 3 songs. If it hits 11 and you got to run and get your kids, bring them back in for the last song. I have no idea how each one mathematically works. But anyways, go ahead and stand up.